Now, the Labour Party has called on President Bola Tinubu to immediately sign an executive order enforcing local government autonomy, warning that continued delays amount to a betrayal of the Supreme Court and grassroots Nigerians. The party, in a statement by its national vice chairman, Southwest Arabambi Abayomi, accused state governors of persistently undermining local government autonomy, despite Supreme Court's July 11, 2024 judgment mandating direct allocation of funds from the Federation account to local government councils. Now, the LP stated that while the president had publicly acknowledged the need for an executive order to compel compliance with the ruling, no concrete action has followed, allowing governors to continue what it describes as willful and unconstitutional interference in local government finances. Now, to discuss this, we are joined by legal practitioner Elvis Asia. Elvis, you're welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the program.
Now, Elvis, what constitutional provisions empower or limit the president's ability to issue an executive order on the local government autonomy?
I don't see any constitutional limitation on the power of the president to ensure that the judgment of the Supreme Court, controlling the local government autonomy and ensuring that the funds of local councils are directly sent to them, are enforced. I don't see any limitation. What I see, of course, it's the lack of political will to do so. The Federation Account Allocation Committee is there. Their business is to allocate funds to the various tasks of government in the country. And so with the decision of the Supreme Court, they can easily insist that, whatever comes to any local government must go to an account that is managed by the local government council. What the Supreme Court has done is that you cannot continue to put local government funds into the state local government joint account. It has to go straight to an account that is managed by the local government council themselves. So, what we are lacking is basically the political will. I want to believe that the president wants to do this, but is limited by his political interest for 2027. He doesn't want to anger so much the governors. Many of them are now in his political party. So that's what I see. I don't see the constitutional limitation in terms of enforcing the judgment. The judgment of the Supreme Court, is automatically enforceable. It's not something that requires any law to be enforced. What we have now is administrative challenges, and which can be corrected by the president. Whether or not he decides to issue an executive order, it really doesn't matter. What is an executive order? It means no more than a direct decision of the executive on how to enforce the laws of the country. And so whether they call it an executive order, whether they call it an administrative solution, whether they call it, so long as the federal government has the power to ensure that the funds of the councils are directly sent to them, so that governors can get to the people. The country is generating more revenue, but people are not feeling it, and that's essentially because the funds of the government are the plaything of the governors.
Now, Elvis, if we look at the Section 7 and 162 of the 1999 Constitution regarding a local government administration and funding, how exactly would such an executive order align with this?
Well, a lot of people have referred to the fact that the Constitution gives the states the powers to make laws with respect to the existence and all of that of local government council. I don't see any conflict with that in terms of ensuring that because the allocation from the federation account is, it is meant to be sent to a particular local government. It's not meant to be sent to the state for the purpose of disbursement by the state to the local governments in that state. It is, there are specifics are mentioned. If it's to my local government, for example, who the local government of Edo State, the money is supposed to be, there's an amount that's supposed to go there. And so what we just need now is to ensure that the money gets there. I understand the fact that there will still be some hurdles because the states still have the power to control the way and manner the government system works. And so many of them can make laws, like we're already seeing some states, like Anambra State, where they're making laws to try to, continue to maintain their hold. But in the interim, we have to make sure that the funds go straight to the local government. I mean, if you take your mind back to 1999, 2000, 2002, 2001, I thank God that we witnessed that, and we saw how local governments were functioning across the country because their funds were getting to them directly from the federation. Yes, it was going through the joint local government state joint account, but it was getting to them, and so they were able to execute projects. It was a functional system. But what we have now is a joke. It's a joke. It's a case of some governors just getting whatever funds that are meant to go to the government, use it for whatever purpose they want to use it, give some peanuts to the council chairman to run one or two things. Initially, before now, it used to be technical committees, boys appointed by governors, to manage the little funds that they will send to the government. That's not the intention of the constitution. Although the constitution says that the states should make laws to ensure the existence and all of that, the government. The funding that goes to local government under the constitution is to the 774 local governments. And let me even shock you that the total fund that goes to the local governments across the country in a year is almost the same thing that goes to the states. You can imagine how massive the amount is. From the records that we are seeing, we are looking at 7-point-something trillion in the last 1 year that was meant to have gone to the local governments. And, these funds haven't gone there. And what has happened to all of these funds? You can't move around. People are traveling home now for Christmas, for New Year celebrations. They don't have roads to get to their homes. The feeder roads that were meant to be done by the government councils cannot be done because the funds are warehoused with the governor who just decides whatever he wants to do with it. So, those who continue to rely on Section 7 and 162 to say that those provisions are there, the Supreme Court has interpreted those provisions to mean that the funds must go to them directly. There's no other place to appeal to. So we just need to enforce it.
Now, my question to you is, can an executive order effectively bypass or override the state control of local government without constitutional amendment?
I think what people are calling executive order on this issue is not meant to regulate how local government exists or whatever, but it's basically to enforce, the Supreme Court decision, which is not part of our laws, which is not part of the interpretation of the Constitution, on how the funds should go straight to local government councils. So yes, the states will still continue to have the power to make laws, which is where I'm worried, which is where I would think that constitutional amendment would, be the final solution on this, problem that we have between the states and local government councils. Because even if the funds gets to local government council accounts, they still have the power to use laws, like I said, we are seeing with Anambra and a few other states, to try to, dictate how the funds are used. And in that process, they might still be able to get back some of it. But in the interim, let us ensure first, based on the decision of the Supreme Court, that the funds go straight to local government councils. And interestingly, by virtue of the decision of the Supreme Court, you cannot make law now. No state can make law now to try to prevent the funds from being used by local government, as allocated. That's the decision of the Supreme Court. The money should go to the local government themselves, and they should be able to use it. Even if you want to make laws to ensure, some of the things that happen in the local government system, even their existence, like the Constitution says, but by virtue of the current interpretation of the Constitution by the Supreme Court, you cannot make law to prevent local government councils from being able to utilize receive their funds themselves and utilizing it for the purpose for which they wish to utilize it, so that the people at the grassroots can get dividends of governance. The idea of
you mentioned something.
Executive order is not meant to change the law. It's just an executive's way of responding to how the laws are enforced. Now, it's not a law in itself.
I want us to take a look at this law enforcement. My final question to you is: could the state government legally challenge such an executive order? They may not be able to change it, but is it possible for them to challenge such an order?
Unless if the order is against the tenure and scope of the decision of the Supreme Court, as you know, the way the Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution. An executive order cannot override the Constitution. It cannot override, our laws. That is clear. So if the whole idea of the executive order is essentially to enforce the judgment, they cannot challenge it. Where are they going to appeal to? They cannot appeal the decision of the Supreme Court. The federal government has the obligation, the Attorney General of the Federation has the obligation to ensure that judgments of courts are enforced to the letter. And so if the idea of an executive order or whatever it is called is to enforce that judgment, I don't see what kind of complaint they're going to have. Unless in the process of enforcing it, you are now abrogating or, violating some other rights that, the Constitution vests on the state. And, in that wise, yes, you can raise an issue. But if the whole idea is just to ensure that the fund, gets to local government directly as interpreted by the Supreme Court, I don't see what complaint that the states can have.
Elvis, thank you so much for your time.